Hi, everyone. I'm Leslie Meehan here with the Silicon Valley Interreligious Council leadership program together to build community resilience, connecting and supporting leaders in our neighborhoods and our sites and hubs. We'll talk a little bit more about what that is. Go ahead, next slide, please. Quick orientation to the 4 sessions in the program. There's an orientation set of slides. If you missed the first session, I'm just going to quickly go through them in a turbo fashion, and you can find out more information looking at slides sent out to you afterwards. So you don't have to scribble and take notes really fast. You'll be able to see it all later. So these sessions are all about resilience. The stories are all from the South Bay, where we live. But the resilience themes are true everywhere. Thanks. Go ahead, Marcia. When we say community resilience, I like the definition from the Institute for Sustainable Community Systems to manage stresses of all kinds and to bounce back stronger. I like to say it's the kind of community that all of us want to live in, using any of the names that we like to use. So you get to think about, what does resilience mean to you? Thank you. Next slide. And resilient regions, like where we live, are the tipping point for global resilience because they're the system in the middle of the top-down national and global. And they're also on top of the local neighborhoods and communities where people know each other and things tend to happen fast. But resilient regions have the size and the capacity to be able to build large infrastructures that we need to, for example, run emergency operations centers. Thanks, Marcia. Next slide. And in this program, we talk about 3 scales of resilient places, maybe in blocks or neighborhoods or apartment buildings who don't have a shared facility, but they can do a lot with their neighbors and friends. Sites are places that are in the community already that are adding resilience programs to what they do, and some resilient facility capacity, like maybe a backup power source. And then there's full service resilient hubs programs that are larger centers that host more facilities. And we'll talk more about that later on. And go ahead, Marcia. This evening, we're going to be hearing Marcia's introduction to emergency management. Then we're going to go into some breakout sessions that we'll describe when we get there. We've got 3 wonderful storytellers here after the breakouts, and then you get to talk with people again in more depth during another set of breakouts. So we have a blend of listening and being able. Take it away, Marcia.
Okay, thank you, Leslie. And you're breaking up a little bit. I don't know if there were a couple people that said that they heard that, so you might need to turn off your camera later, but since you're not going to be talking for a little bit, it should be fine. Okay, so I'm Marcia Hovey. I'm the Executive Director of CADRESV, which is Collaborating Agencies Disaster Relief Effort. I'm going to talk about resilience through emergency management, how CADRESV builds a more resilient community, and then later we'll go through the other presentations that show you what other resilience success stories we have in Santa Clara County, and hopefully inspire you to invent your own. So we're going to talk about the landscape of emergency management, which is like the high level, government level of emergency planning, and how we CADRESV support the response, how individuals and groups can help, and then we're going to do the breakout session. So this is the emergency management landscape. On the left, you see the non-governmental organizations called VOADs, which is voluntary organizations active in disaster. They do have volunteers that work for them, but they're nonprofits that voluntarily respond to disasters because they want to help, not because they have a legal obligation to do that. And then on the right is the government structured level of government, which is the standardized emergency management system. They're supposed to only communicate one level up. So to keep the conversation flowing smoothly, so the field first responders can only talk to their city, and the city can only talk to the operational area, which is the county and all of the political subdivisions or cities in the county. And then the county talks to the state, the region, Office of Emergency Services region, and as well as the state. And then the state talks to FEMA. Now, contrasting that to what CADRE can do as the VOAD is that we can talk across all those levels because we have a much smaller group of counterpart organizations to work with. And so when we have a call, everyone's at the table, which is good because it allows us to find out what programs are being offered at all different levels at the same time that are available to nonprofits and the community. And we are focused on the community's response. And I apologize, my dog thinks it's dinner time and he may not be quiet here. So CADRE, this is our new draft mission statement. We're bridging the gaps between vital non-government resources and the communities in crisis in Santa Clara County. So this is a partial list that of the different functional groups that we've created that, and it's all about resilience is all about relationships and resources. So whatever you're doing, whatever the common cause is that you're around, it's when you develop the relationships and identify the resources, then you are more resilient. And so we bring the similar group, people that do the same things together to talk, to build the relationships and to identify the resources so that in a disaster, they're more willing to help each other and have the capacity to help the community. After a disaster, of course, everyone wants to help, but they don't all know how to plug into the official emergency management system. If you're not plugged into the system before the disaster, then there are obstacles in helping. And if you go rogue, which we do sometimes have organizations say, well, we're just going to open a shelter and let the community come, or we're going to start accepting donations and we're going to let the community bring all their donations here. Well, both of those are bad ideas because if the city didn't add you to their plan, they're not going to support you. Because they probably don't have the resources to support you because you weren't part of the plan. So if you want to do those kind of things, we want to talk to you ahead of time in order to make sure that you'll be successfully supported. And especially when you're doing it without the support of CADRE and the government, then you burn out right when the disaster happens, and recovery takes a long, long time. And we need people that are able to continue to work for the long haul to bring the community back to some level of normalcy again. So that's what CADRE helps to support, is that plugging everyone in to the best place in the system. And everybody has a different role. So the things for a resilient community, you want to, if you're just providing education, the biggest thing is to promote the alert and warning system, because if the community doesn't know how to, if they're not getting warned that something's happening, then they're going to be a victim. They're not going to have time to make good decisions. So there's that. And then public education, which is all of the preparedness about what to do if there's an earthquake or a fire or a flood. So you could host training in your neighborhood or at your organization. You can do connecting and coordination at an organization level, at a neighborhood level, at a cadre level that's countywide, and then demonstrating the preparedness. And you're going to hear a few stories tonight, but when you start to demonstrate that ability to be prepared, you inspire people. And that inspiration gets others to prepare and realizes that this is not something that's just kind of an idea that might happen someday. It's something that will happen. And if you're not ready, it's nobody's fault but yours. So the big thing about signing up for alerts and warnings is, if you're in Santa Clara County, sign up for Alert SCC, Alert Santa Clara County. I'll put the links in the chat somehow. My screen is tied up, but I'll get them in there when we do the breakout. And then Cruise Aware is Santa Cruz County's new alert and warning system. And so that's going to be your first notice, unless you see the smoke or feel the shaking. This is going to be your first instructions on what to do to be ready and respond. There is one app that is pre-alert. It's for earthquakes, the My Shake app. It's available for iPhone and Android. It warns you before the ground shakes. It depends on how far away from the epicenter you are. So if you're right on top of the epicenter, you're not going to get, it'll go off after you felt the shaking. But if you're, any distance from it, like it's happening in San Francisco or a little bit north of us, you're going to get up to a minute of warning, which would give you time to get off a ladder or a roof or step away from a window and actually properly protect yourself, not be surprised that the ground started to shake. And because of that, you're going to be less likely to get injured. And that's the goal, is to not get you injured. Okay, so Cadre has lots of information and resources available to you. It's all free. We do webinars. Thanks to COVID, we have a library of webinars on different topics that you can listen to, and supporting materials. We do also do in-person events, and that you hear about either by seeing the event posted on the website or being part of our mailing list. And then we have, this is just a partial list, on each one of these categories has a drop-down list of resources. So, and it goes down, and there's for schools and the faith community, and everything is here that I've accumulated as an emergency manager now for 25 years. I've accumulated a lot, and it's all here now. But it's a way for you to get resources that are reliable. We can help you plan. We can help you create new resources. We have translated resources on earthquake and wildfire now. And I think I'm talking about that in another slide, so I'll stop about that now. We have a 24/7 duty officer, so the cities can call us and say, we are having a problem, and we're going to need you to alert the nonprofits to help. We'll convene the representatives. We'll compile a list of the resources that are available for that event. We'll connect organizations with government so that they're working together, and then we represent the non-governmental organizations for if they're not getting what they need from local government, because local government, there's to protect lives, property, and the environment, and that focus is primarily on individuals. And they expect businesses and nonprofits and faith community to do it on their own, to be ready for at least 3 days. And I also expect you to be ready for at least 3 days, but if you're connected to Cadre, then we can report to the government what the status of our non-government organizations are. And they have no mechanism to get that kind of a status from the rest of the community. So that's why we're there. This flood response that you see, this is just an example. We have a response and relief section on our website. And in this area, we add the current resources. So each one of these is a drop down, and it becomes essentially a one-stop shop for you if you're looking for things related to what to do before the flooding or after the flooding, or there's an entire list of all of the jurisdictions and their websites and social media pages. So if you're trying to gather information, you can get it there. There are multiple links to power outages and road closures and so we've compiled them not just locally, but we've like the National Weather Services under the weather forecast, but there are a couple of other weather apps as well, so that you can, you know, really get the good information without searching all over the internet in the middle of an emergency. And we had one for COVID, it's still there. And we just had one for the storms. So we have a very small staff of like 5 people that all work less than part-time. So, but we keep it going. This is our website, and the preparedness section. You can see if you click on library, that'll be that whole long list. For earthquake, there's a specific page, and we have translations in 21 languages right now. There's a video recording on what to do if you're at home when there's an earthquake, and then a handout or 2 that go with that. We also have immigrant support information for individuals that may be afraid to seek assistance after an earthquake. Same thing for wildfire, and then the webinars, just so that you have a quick place to look for those when you're on our website. And I will put all these links in the chat at some point. We do create a resource directory, and so for whoever you represent, you may have some of these resources, and you may have never have thought that they would be valuable in a disaster, but I'll tell you, they all are. Not that we'll use them all in every disaster, but we really need to know where all of our resources are in the community. Because we have plenty of resources in Santa Clara County. We just need to know how to access them and have people that understand what that means. It's like, if we break it, we buy it. You know, we're not taking things without permission, and we're not asking you to donate your time unless that's what your mission is. So people, obviously, transportation of all kinds, even forklifts and big facilities that might be able to house people as a shelter, or outside event tents that could also be used for shelters or animal shelters, or storage facilities that might be able to donate some temporary space so that we can put away, you know, bottles of water or diapers, or, you know, something that's of great need during whatever the emergency is. Fuel is still a tough one, even though we have a jillion gas stations in Santa Clara County. They don't have generators, so they can't pump gas if the power's out. And so we're still looking for a creative solution to that problem, but fuel will be in short supply. So if you have fuel powered equipment, you should calculate how much fuel you would need for a week if you were operating on more than a normal schedule. And then we're going to have that conversation with the jurisdictions to talk about how are we going to make sure that everybody is fueled, that all of the responders and support organizations are fueled. I mentioned donations. This is the disaster within a disaster, because when you ask the public for donations, this is what you get. And it takes a lot of people power to sort through this. Much of it gets thrown away because it's not useful. So we do encourage no one to accept donations. We encourage people to have yard sales and sell donated things and give the cash to the organizations that are helping with the disaster, not just the Red Cross, because they have one role as shelter, and they also have a big national organization and are really good at getting donations. But then the smaller organizations don't always do that. So in our county, actually in multiple counties, the Silicon Valley Community Foundation has an emergency fund. If you donate to that emergency fund, And this is what we want to tell the whole community. You donate to the emergency fund, and the community foundation gives it to the organizations that CADRE works with them to tell them these are the organizations that need funding during this event, and then they will fund the right organizations. That's a great way to build resilience, is to make sure that all the donations go to a usable source. Okay, almost done. So possibilities, what could you offer if you're in a neighborhood, or if you're in a business, or in a religious facility, that you might have meeting space that would be valuable to CADRE or the government, because we don't know what's going to be damaged or not. So we just need to have an inventory of where might we be able to meet. Again, storage, cooling centers and warming centers is a big challenge, where the government does not have the staff to run cooling centers and warming centers. And there are some challenges with doing that. So they can support organizations that want to stand up a center. But we just need to have that conversation so that the pluses and minuses of doing it. And there are organizations in the county, several churches that have stood up shelters in partnership with the county, with the cities and or the county. As far as volunteers, there might be spiritual care, people offering prayer. We don't permit proselytizing unless the person asks, but prayer is often requested, as well as mental health services. You can check on your neighborhood as volunteers and make sure that everybody's okay there, which is kind of step one. You can help distribute supplies at an official distribution site, or you can become an official distribution site. You can just share preparedness information. You can have your team do shelter training and actually do a shelter. You can help with cleanup and repairs after a disaster as people are trying to get their lives back together. And that's just a few of the possibilities. And then if you do provide meals to the unhoused or any group right now, we'd like you to be able to continue to do that during a disaster. And we have just started a county-wide food discussion group, so that we can help each other if some facilities are damaged. Clothes closet is another one. If you already collect donations and give them to the poor, that is something that we would like to be able to help you expand if you want to. Childcare for responders or for nonprofits that are trying to, operate 24/7 now. Rides. I mean, I know that there are organizations in the county right now that do all of these things, which is why I'm just bringing them up, because you can always use more and you have best practices available to you. Tool library is something that we're looking at now, which is, I think, pretty cool, is instead of everybody going out and buying that tool that sits in your garage, that you have a tool library and people borrow it and it comes back, and then they borrow something else, and then you save a lot of money that way. And if you can't afford the tools, then you can still use the tools, which we really like. Networking, if you have a network already, if you're a neighborhood association or you're a block captain, depending on if there is any organization already, or you're a part of a chamber of commerce or a business that has a network, like we do already have some food networks. It's just not countywide, but we just need the networks to talk to each other, and CADRE will facilitate that. We do outreach. That's a volunteer thing that we need all the time, is people that are knowledgeable about preparedness that want to go out and staff booths so that we can help get the message out. This supply list is one of the things that we have translated into 22 languages on how to start your emergency supply list at the dollar store. And there is not an easier way to do it. And then how can we work together? If you are an organization or a department in an organization, you can sign the partner agreement to show your support for CADRE and the idea of collaborating. It doesn't cost anything. There are no obligations. You can be part of the communication network, so that you can share information with the people that trust you as a source of information, and then answer their questions by funneling the questions up to Cadre, and then we'll get the answers back to you. You can become a coordination network of different organizations in your local community. And then just do your daily resilience, which is talking to people and making friends and talking about emergency preparedness or climate change, or, you know, all of the things that once we have the relationships that we can all make a difference in together. Let me, and then we're going to do Map Your Neighborhood, which is from Jennifer Ponce from the city of Morgan Hill. And then, am I breaking up now? Am I delayed?
No.
Okay. And then, community service, from James Ballin from Congregation Etz Chayim. I hope I did that right. He can fix it for me. Okay, here we go, Art.
Great. I'll take it away. Thank you. Great. Hi, everybody. I'm one of the leaders of Resilient Los Altos. We are a group trying to bring a bunch of stakeholders together. We're a fiscally sponsored project of the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation. And you can see with our logo here, the things that we directly control are the Block Action Team, the CERTS, and Los Altos Amateur Radio Emergency Service. All of the other groups are stakeholders that we're trying to get engaged and involved in doing emergency preparedness for the community as well. Next. So we were formed just over 10 years ago as part of what was then the Los Altos Community Foundation. And we formed the BAT project about that time. And about a year later, we started the first CERT classes in Los Altos. Shortly after that, the HAMs in Los Altos, the ARES, or Amateur Radio Emergency Service folks who had been around for about 50 years, joined in that effort. And we've been working together, coordinating for that time. In 2021, we decided to be more formally aggregated together, so we formed Resilient Los Altos to include BAT, CERTS, and HAMs, and to begin actually having relationships with shareholders or stakeholders. So far, we've had good results with the City of Los Altos, the Santa Clara County Fire District, CADRE, obviously, Los Altos School District, the Mountain View Los Altos High School District, some faith-based community groups, working on allied health, and our business community are the ones that we're still working on. Next. So in a declared or de facto emergency, the BAT, CERTS, and HAMs are prepared to immobilize as trained volunteers to work in neighborhoods to assess the damage and personal injury and damage in their neighborhoods. And the HAMs have worked out the techniques to be able to carry that information from the neighborhoods into 11 zones that we talk about in the city called emergency information reporting sites that then are going into the city's emergency operations center. The city is not going to be doing much for citizens during that period. We really believe that the people who are going to save the neighborhoods are going to not be wearing badges. They're going to be neighbors and coworkers going forward. Next. So the city does have an emergency operations plan. On page 4 of that, it talks about the assumptions that were used during the development of the EOP. The two highlighted in the bottom, I think, are worth looking at. Next. So residents may need to be self-sufficient for a week or more, and additional planning and resources will be needed to support people with disabilities and others with access and functional needs. So what the city is saying is, and I think this is probably true for most of the communities in this area, there are not enough police, typically 6 on duty in Los Altos and 6 firemen on duty in Los Altos, to take care of 30,000+ people. So you need to be self-reliant. And so people trained to be CERTs and BAT leaders and HAMs to try to be able to work on that and to organize so that we will not be having huge disasters. And I think if you ask the person on the street whether they think that they need to be self-sufficient for a week or more in Los Altos, some large fraction of people will be astonished at that. They just expect, well, the firemen will be there if my house is on fire. Not going to be true. Next. So kind of growth in service. Today, we've managed to infiltrate to about 25% of the Los Altos neighborhoods, about 300 volunteers working these days with this. We're still obviously trying to increase that number. We do 4 Zoom classes to train people to organize their neighborhoods to become BAT leaders. We have neighborhood drills. We actually have one coming on this Saturday to do a communication drill to see that people understand how radios work and how we will be able to communicate to the city when things happen. Just this year, we've started 5 quarterly classes at the Los Altos Community Center. All of these are free, by the way. And one of our folks does a monthly talk at the Los Altos Library on emergency preparation topics. We also reach out through information tables. We were at the Los Altos Police Department open house and the Los Altos Community Center open house, and at least did 1 farmers market last year, probably do another couple this year. We volunteer, Certs and Hams specifically volunteer for city service for things like the Art and Wine Festival and Festival of Lights. What the city had come to for many years, it had been just the Hams that were doing this work. But what the city realized was that they probably couldn't deal with any kind of a mass casualty event. So they've asked us to start having certs at these events. So we'll have typically at the Festival of Lights, we'll have 40 or so Hams and another 15 or so certs in the crowds being prepared to deal with anything that goes wrong. One of the things that we did with our faith-based activity was to join and produce the beginnings of emergency go bags for Compassion Week. So we had 200 go bags that were set out for seniors and AFN folks. Next. So we really want people to get to know their neighbors. So one of the questions we asked, do you know seniors or people with access and functional needs in your neighborhood? The city is not in a position to help them. Do you know a CERT? Do you know if there's a doctor or nurse or even a vet in your neighborhood? Do you know who owns a generator? Do you know when was your last block party? And are you planning already to participate in National Night Out this year? Lots of ways to meet your neighbors and make sure that they're aware. Disaster preparedness tends to be a little bit of a downer, but it's always nice to have people talk about that. And next. And last slide. So what we're trying to do is to prepare to respond and recover from significant events that might occur. We want people to be physically and mentally prepared to face an emergency. We love you to practice to get some body memory going. One of the things we do with people is we say, the lights just went out. How do you get out? Be aware of your situation so that you know how to get out. Do you look when you go to a hotel? Do you find out how to get out before you lock the door for the night? One of the things we try to do is create incentives. So if you get somebody, either your neighbors to come, give them an ice cream. Maybe that'll be enough to get them to go, or do evacuation practice at home or at work and take everybody for ice cream after that. We really want some training to fill in your weak or risky spots. Marcia talked about volunteers being ready to show up at any point, but we call them spontaneous, unaffiliated volunteers, or SUVs, and they're of almost no value because unless you're a doctor or a vet or a carpenter, we probably can't use you in any way, and people get frustrated when we have to tell you away. So I think the last thing is to talk about situations. Storytelling is essential to survival. We do it all the time to try and get people to think of what they will do. So it what turns preparation into a ritual and victims into saviors, we believe. So that's my 8 minutes. I think I see where there's 8 minutes and 36 seconds. So I ran long. I'm sorry. You're on mute, Marcia.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you for being on time. 8 minutes and 36 seconds is just fine. And even if you were a doctor or nurse, if we can't check your credentials at the time of the disaster, we can't use you either. So it's all about getting yourself set up for success by pre-registering with your local jurisdiction as a disaster service worker, and then they can check your credentials, or signing up with a local medical reserve corps that are in several of the cities, and or joining a function team from Cadre. But you're right. It's they're spontaneous volunteers are good if all we need you to do is move something from here to here. But beyond that, if you have skills, we want to know about them ahead of time so we can use you to the max possible. All right. So next is Jennifer Ponce, who is the Emergency Services Coordinator for the City of Morgan Hill, and she's going to talk about Map Your Neighborhood. And she also has Sherry Purser on, who is running the program for Morgan Hill. So
Great.
take it away, Jennifer.
Okay, great. Thank you. Listen to this, everybody. Hey, Alexa, set an 8-minute timer. Okay. Hey, Art, you're a tough act to follow. I was really impressed with what you're doing in Los Altos, and thanks for sharing. I'm going to do a little bit of an organic presentation based on all the good stuff that Art said. I think that we already know. We learned a lot from you, Art. So I'm the Emergency Services Coordinator for the City of Morgan Hill. There's 15 of us in Santa Clara County working for the different municipalities, or there's vacancies. And these positions are also filled by colleges, special districts, etc. So I want to say thank you to all of you that are here today that are volunteers. Thank you very much. We need you so much. So just like Art said, man, we have enough first responders for everyday, day-to-day calls, but anything outside of that, we're in trouble. So you can hit the next slide, Marcia. Guess who your closest source of help are? Your neighbors. So around the time of the '89 earthquake, there was a wonderful person, there still is a wonderful person named Luann Johnson. She's a public education manager now with Washington State Emergency Management. She's probably retired. But in the '89 earthquake, she put together a program where in neighborhoods, groups of homes, approximately 10 households got together and did what's called Map Your Neighborhood. The program came in fruition up in the state of Washington, and through a grant with Homeland Security became available. I don't know if you can see, you probably can't. There is a brochure, and you can go to the next slide, Marcia. Map Your Neighborhood is organic, as I said. So in Morgan Hill, with Sherry Purser as our lead, who is a CERT graduate and instructor and a ham radio operator, took a big map and helped group neighborhoods together. And then every 9/11 up until COVID, we had a recognition where we recognized first responders and then got neighbors to come and get interested in Map Your Neighborhoods. And then we would get neighborhood captains for houses of 10, draw maps, and they would get together as neighbors and walk through these 9 steps that I have here, which are basically, first and foremost, take care of your loved ones, dress for safety, check for natural gas and propane, shut off your water. We encourage them to put signs up on their house, whether they're okay or whether they need help. And even as basic as placing a fire extinguisher, if you have one and don't need it, out onto the sidewalks for others that can grab and utilize. Next slide. And this is a picture of our CERT team practicing the buddy system. We all know that, right? Extinguishing fire. So our thought is you get those fire extinguishers from your home out onto the sidewalks, and those that are trained can come grab them and help extinguish small fires. Next slide. And the final steps really are to take care of loved ones. We mentioned in our breakout room, you got to get to know your neighbors. There's people that are home alone, that might have different challenges, might have children at home. We need to know our neighbors, and that's the basis of Map Your Neighborhood. So these teams take care of their loved ones, then meet at a neighborhood gathering site. And if you'll go to the next slide, I think I might have a picture of a neighborhood gathering site. I do. That's our Morgan Hill group there. And they get together and divvy out tasks, which are outlined in our Map Your Neighborhood program. And quite honestly, they are based on what are your skill set, what kind of equipment do you have. We've gone over this in our conversations this evening, but putting people in the places where they can help the most. Even if you feel like there's nothing you can do, or you have someone in your neighborhood, somebody can be manage the neighborhood gathering place, or use their garage as a spot where people can gather and seek shelter. And I see that someone has mentioned that a lot of communities, neighbors don't trust their neighbors. That is definitely the world we live in, and that is a challenge. That's why all of us good people on this call and everyone else, the more people that we can get together and form relationships, even if it's just small relationships, we will know each other when difficult things happen, and we can spring into action with those who need us. And then finally, after neighbors are checked on and are tended to, people meet back at the neighborhood gathering site. What's the next slide I have up, Marcia? Alexa's still letting me go. Okay, we covered this. Next slide. So this is just a picture of, this is actually the sectors in Morgan Hill. These are the sectors that the police respond to. And we've used these sectors to create neighborhoods. What is that, that social media platform, if anyone could tell me in the chat? Oh, Nextdoor. So we started in Morgan Hill CERT using the neighborhoods identified in Nextdoor as a place to start. And then we're just working ourselves into the smaller neighborhood groups. Next slide. And that's me, if anyone has questions. We have utilized our CERT members, our ham radio volunteers, and now our Map Your Neighborhood programs folks in many different difficult scenarios in Morgan Hill. And I'd be happy to share those in a breakout. Fires, floods, you may all know that we evacuated with the SCU Lightning Complex fires in Morgan Hill, and that was Sherry's neighborhood. Sherry, in the time remaining, would you mind speaking to the success of the program and how many neighborhoods that we have mapped?
Sure. One of the successes that we had was during that fire in Jackson Oaks. What we did was Jackson Oaks is about 500 and some odd homes, and it's split into neighborhoods of anywhere from about 10 to 18 homes. And we did Zoom meetings prior to the evacuation. So when we were told we were going to evacuate, we immediately contacted each other and created Zoom meetings so that we could log where people were going to make sure they were okay and they had a way to get out, because there are some neighbors who don't drive anymore. And it worked out really well. And there were a couple of us. My husband's a former firefighter, and one of my neighbors is a former fire captain for Santa Clara. And we actually did not evacuate. So when the evacuation was lifted, one of the challenges we have is at the back of the workbook, which Jennifer had described, there's an okay help sign. And you're supposed to put that on your window, your front window, whether it be outside or inside. And some people chose to put it on the outside of their windows, and it shows where they've left. And so what we did is we went around and collected those once the evacuation was lifted, because we were concerned of looters, for people who, for instance, didn't make it back in very quickly. And so, and that worked out really well. And neighbors were able to contact us, and we were able to update things. So that was even though it wasn't an earthquake per se, the one nice thing about Map Your Neighborhood is that it's very, very flexible, depending upon the types of disasters that might apply to your neighborhood. You can actually forecast or put something on the map. For instance, in Jackson Oaks, we actually put where all the pools are, which are extra bodies of water that the fire department might need if there's a semi-trash pump, or if they're carrying a pump in their truck. So they have access to that. And the same thing for flood. I mean, you can decide what other things you want to put in your workbook that will help your neighborhood. And as far as the number of homes in Morgan Hill, there are a few thousand homes that have gone through Map Your Neighborhood. We have we started it in 2010, and some of the challenges would be the sustainability, because people move, and so you have to keep up on renewing that Map Your Neighborhood. So as people move, in my neighborhood specifically, what we do is we have a get together, and we try to meet the new neighbors, and then we include them and give them a workbook with all the information on it. The information includes things like equipment that people have and skill sets that people have. And that helps outside of the disaster scenario. So for instance, my husband and myself, we have an AED at our house, and the neighbors all know that. So if there's an issue, that they know where they can come to get an AED, or who has first aid skills, or who might have a chainsaw if a tree goes down, things like that. Is that enough, Jennifer?
Well, I think it's wonderful information, but our dear friend Alexa just went bing, 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 bing.
Oh, okay, good.
But Sherry's been very, very successful. I'm so grateful that she was here. She knows much more about the program. And both Sherry and I are always willing to help any of you kick off this program in your area.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and even though it was all CERT in the picture, it doesn't require a lot of training. The actual video series is an hour and a half.
Oh, actually, I think that either Sherry or I will put that video in the chat. It's really informative. It sums everything up.
Yeah,
Thanks for
and can you put the website that has all of the little broken out sections? Because
Yeah.
it's great information and it's really quick. But you really could, even if you can't organize your neighborhood, it starts a conversation. And they can go watch it at home, but it truly is a great way to make people realize that they do better together. In fact, that I'll say one more thing and then I will stop. What was I going to say? I was the emergency manager in Cupertino, and we had a lot of CERT neighborhoods, community emergency response team. I don't know if we ever said that out loud. There was one that had 84 homes in it, and they had identified 14 different languages and people that could do translation in the neighborhood and all this, but it took one person. She kept it going for over 20 years. She got a couple other people to come along and help, but when someone new moved into the neighborhood, she'd go right to their door and say, "Hi, I'm Sharon, and we have an organized neighborhood here for disasters. What role would you like to play?" And it wasn't like you're not going to participate. We're here as a community and you're part of our community now. So, but it definitely takes at least one person. And if you can get a team of people to support it, it's just that much more exciting. And it's way more fun than just building a kit. And it breaks down the diversity because you start to get to know people that maybe you wouldn't have any other reason to talk to because you just don't know who they are. And it really breaks down all kinds of barriers. Okay. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank
Can
you.
I add one thing?
Yep.
It does break down barriers. I did a group on the other side of Morgan Hill, and it was a new person who had moved into the neighborhood. And it was like there was some, I don't know, combative stuff going on in the neighborhood. And she wanted to do the entire neighborhood, and it brought the whole neighborhood together. So these decades worth of fights that were going on, they kind of dissolved it once they got together and did it. So it can do that.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you. All right. And our final presentation is by, why did I not put your name on this slide?
Maybe I didn't.
James
So-
Ballin.
So I'm James Ballin. I'm here with David Snyder, and we're with Congregation Etz Chayim. And hearing these great presentations, I'm realizing the resources that you've presented, some excellent resources, and it's clear that we can there's some low-hanging fruit for us to improve our abilities here. I was thinking that we might represent an average religious organization, but unfortunately, I think maybe we're a little bit above average because we've had an emergency preparedness committee for more than 10 years, going on 15 years, and our focus has been the basic necessities that we need for the people who come in the door here. And it's really interesting, your presentations show how even going as far as evacuating fires in the state, how you don't just have to be local, you can be regional in this kind of work. So we have our president. Well, let's talk about emergency preparedness and recovery. Really quickly, a brief history and our current status.
Is it me or is
James,
it-
you're kind of
breaking up.
And
yeah,
some
James, turn off your video.
facility operators
James,
that
you're breaking up.
we've managed to do the past 20 years.
Your video.
Let's see.
James, you're
My
breaking up.
connection might be weak here.
Why don't you turn
Yeah.
off
Okay.
your,
My video?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, next slide, please. So this building was a YWCA built in 1962, and we got it. We were able to acquire it in around 2004, and we did some remodeling, including we redid the roof with a foam roof, which increases our thermal efficiency. And then more recent years, we've been able to add EV car charging in 2017. Utility solar panels in 2021. We upgraded our heating system to a modern heat pump HVAC, so we now have cooling in 2022. And we've worked with an organization called Move View, and they're specialized in arranging for people who need a place to park overnight, a safe place to park overnight. And we've been authorized for 4 guests overnight in our parking lot. And they provide a portable bathroom and a wash station for them. And that was actually, it took the committee who focused on that took a number of months to work with the city neighbors to coordinate that, but we did get it in place. Next slide, please. Hopefully I'm not breaking up.
No, you're good.
So we have an emergency preparedness plan that's updated every few years. We have a religious school, and the classes, every class has access to an emergency backpack. Every room has a fight. We do an evacuation training. This process, that just our regular communications every week is an exercise in a system where our congregants are connected with each other, with the organization. So it would be easy for us to add on emergency response or emergency readiness to our regular communications. And when we have a scheduled event, we have a person assigned as our first responder and point of contact. And then we're looking to, as the next step, we would look at getting a portable battery, a solar powered portable battery. Next slide. So our HVAC upgrade is, we had a natural gas, an ancient inefficient boiler. We've replaced that with a heat pump system, and now every room has a zone control. So if we had, like you were talking about, a heat event, we could bring people in and give them cool places to stay if there was such a thing. And because we have included potable hot water as part of the heat pump system, we were able to remove our last gas appliance and disconnect from the utility service. So in the case of an earthquake, we wouldn't even have to turn off the gas because we don't have gas anymore. Next slide, please. And we've added a utility-based solar system on the roof. As I prepared for this presentation, I realized that this solar panels cannot really be used in an emergency, but we do. And it was put in with a cutoff switch, and because of you don't want the utility to be energized during an emergency if the utility workers need to work on it. So I think in an emergency, our system would be disconnected from the utility until the utility could say, yes, you could turn back on. And we have no battery storage on site. Next slide, please. And here's a picture of our car charging stations. And we have up to 4 guests that can stay overnight. And when we these various upgrades, the solar and the car charging stations have been they've been properly coordinated with our building's electrical load capacity. I think that's the last slide.
Yeah, this is David. Let me just add to that. Again, as a faith-based organization that's been around for since 2004, the building was established. The community has worked on supporting members of the congregation. And I think what James and I are learning from participating in tonight's session and the session that I attended March 6th is that there are opportunities to work with the external community. But as Marcia kind of pointed out, you have to think it through. She mentioned that, like, you can't just go and ask someone, to serve as a physician if you haven't pre-qualified them. Well, in the same way, we would not be able to just throw open our doors and do something if we didn't have pre-planning for it, which we're not set up for yet, with the exception of the 4 parking spaces in the parking lot, which took some work to arrange. So we're dipping our toe in the water of working with the external community, and we're getting new ideas to help our own congregants. sort of, if you want to think of it as a nebulous block action team. Most of our congregants are located in the Palo Alto, Los Altos area, but in Mountain View, but also further out. So this has been a real learning for James and me, and we hope that you found this an interesting example of how a facility can work on its environmental issues as well as its preparedness.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I wanted you to present, because you didn't know you were preparing for an emergency necessarily, but you were, and you were setting yourself up to be able to be a contributor to the disaster recovery. And that's, it's like the little steps that you're taking to make your facility, more efficient, also make your facility more valuable in an emergency. And so I just wanted everybody to know, it's like, whatever you're doing, we can put a disaster spin on it. And the fact that, and these are great best practices. There's nothing here that, you wouldn't want every organization to do. Plus, because you're the trusted source of information to your congregation, then you are going to be more successful in getting them to be prepared and to read and believe the information that you share with them about being prepared. Same with different cultural groups and ethnic groups that you find where they normally congregate, where is their trusted place, and you connect with the trusted place and you reach out that way, and that's how you gain the trust and can break down those barriers in neighborhoods too. But you have to start with a good spokesperson that they're going to believe, because not everyone doesn't trust government or any authority. So that's okay. We don't have to get credit. We just want everybody to be safe after that emergency. All right.
Yeah, I just want to share that essentially what you're describing is what we talked about last time, which is a resilience hub, which really integrates that disaster preparedness with the sustainability piece with the community building piece. And so your synagogue really is doing such a great job at that. And ultimately, it'd be really great to connect the adjoining neighborhoods to your site, so that in the case of a catastrophe, they, perhaps could be supported by your site. I don't know if you thought about that, but some resilience hubs are doing that.
That's sort of a what do you call them? A stretch goal. Got a lot of things on our plate before that, but it's certainly on the horizon.
Yeah, and I just, everyone also pay attention to the fact that this was not overnight, that they did this over 10 plus years, and that you're never fully ready and you can always do more, but don't try to do it all at once. Take baby steps. And then one day you look back and look at all of the things that you've done and the difference that you've made in your community or even in your family. And it's a very good feeling. All right, we're back to breakouts, Susan.